Hello everyone and welcome to another video. This is one of my short 10-minute videos on why you shouldn't collect rent by direct deposit and Zelle and what you should be doing instead. My name's Art. I'm with Rent to Wealth, where I help landlords profit more from their rentals and automate their systems so they can spend their time actually making money and not managing the money they already have. So let's get right into it. Collecting rent is one of the most consistent interactions you're going to have with tenants. It's the primary way most landlords interact. You usually see them at least once a month when you're collecting rent. Hopefully you don't see them 2 or 3 times as you collect portions of rent. But either way, it's usually your most frequent interaction with your tenant. It's vital to your success as an investor. If you cannot collect your rents consistently, you cannot profit and build your real estate empire. Typically, in my experience, a very hands-on approach works best when you're dealing with collecting rent. Tenants like to see you or see someone and hear a voice and know, have some interaction with the person they're dealing with. Now, this new tech that's out, which we'll get into in a second, has allowed landlords to kind of set it and forget it, meaning that you can set up the way you collect your rent and then you can kind of forget it. You can kind of spend your time doing other things, and that is great in most cases. But there are some bad things that can go along with this. Some of them I know from experience, some of them I know from interactions I've had with other landlords, and so I want to go over some of the bad things that can happen and what you can do overall to make a better experience for you and your tenant. Now, the first way to collect rent that a lot of people are doing that's new technology is Zelle, which is direct instant payments to your bank account. A lot of people use this. If you've had any, whether you're a landlord or not, you've probably, if you're tech savvy, you use Zelle to send money to someone. It's quick, it's instant, and it makes a lot of sense, and it doesn't cost anything. Most landlords like Zelle. It's easy to set up. The tenant understands it because they're using it in their regular everyday life, and the landlord understands it because they use it as well. Most banks have it unless you get into a small credit union, and even those credit unions are starting to get Zelle set up. Tenants like and understand it, which is always important. It makes it easy. Now, I have seen some older tenants that don't really like Zelle because they don't use online banking, which kind of is a requirement for Zelle. So you can sometimes have a little bit of a technology disconnect with older tenants because they don't understand Zelle. One of the issues that you can have with Zelle is if you're in an eviction, if you're telling a tenant they have to move out of your property, they typically, depending on the state you're in, if you collect rent from that tenant during the time that you're evicting them, then they can use that as a defense to say, hey, I know I didn't pay the rent, but I paid a portion of it. So the landlord's really working with me, and the judge could throw the case out. For example, I've had landlords that I deal with in Illinois. I'm in Illinois, and I've had landlords that have, let's say, a tenant's rent is $1,000 a month, and the tenant waited to 2 weeks before court, and they owe, like, let's say $3,000 or $4,000 because they're 3 or 4 months behind, and they actually send in $500 to Zelle, and then when they got to court, they basically said, hey, we paid some money to the landlord. We're working on a payment plan, and he accepted it, and the judge was again, friendly to the tenant and threw the case out because of the fact that they had accepted the money from Zelle. And it's a little bit difficult. Some people say you can stop payments from Zelle. I've never seen it where you can reject them. Typically, when you have Zelle on, especially if someone's made payments to you in the past, they can just direct deposit to you, and that can complicate court. So that's one thing to look out with Zelle. The other option is direct bank deposit. This works one of 2 ways. In one way, some banks have a deposit only card that you can give to your tenants. They can go to the ATM and they can deposit only into your account and do cash. With that, you're going to have the same issue with a court case because they can direct deposit unless you turn that card off. The other way is if they have your account information and they can actually walk into any branch that's your bank, and then they can just make a deposit to your account. I don't like that because it can sometimes pose a security issue with the tenant having your bank info. There are all kinds of scammers and things like that right now, and your tenant doesn't have to be the one to scam you. They could actually have a family member or a friend that can say, hey, I know how to do this scam, give me the bank number. So I'm just leery of people having my bank account number. I don't like that. And like I said, it can complicate an eviction. So let me talk about the way that we do rent collection and why I think it's a better way over both of these, and it's easier. Our solution is a little bit hybrid. It's called an escrow company. Now, escrow companies are essentially companies that are set up they're usually set up for mortgage payments. So if you ever had a mortgage and you set up a loan with ABC Bank, but then 123 Company is the company that actually calls you and collects mortgage payments and everything, and you send the payments to them. They're working as a servicer. That's what an escrow company does. It works as a servicer for the landlord. They will make the phone calls to the tenant. They'll set up everything. They can set up if your tenant prefers mailing in direct checks, they can set that up. If they want to pay by phone, they can set that up. They do everything as far as collecting the payments. And then on top of that, they directly deposit those payments to you. I like this for a couple of reasons. One is because they're going to direct deposit into my account, and it's still a buffer between what my tenant does and what the escrow company gets. So they don't have to directly know any of my bank account information, the tenant. I also like it because they're going to deal with all the calls. So when the tenant is late on payment, the escrow company is going to call them and follow up and, hey, where's your rent? And they're going to do all that stuff. And the tenant will look at them as the bad guy and not me as the bad guy, which I always prefer to have someone else as the bad guy. These do have a cost to them, the escrow company. But the benefit is if you set it up right, the way we set our system up, you can set it up where you don't have to pay anything and the tenant covers the full cost of the escrow company. And like I said before, they'll handle all the collection calls and they're a buffer between you and the tenant. There's also some other benefits with escrow because this tip can save you a ton of stress. We made this change about 10 years ago. And it made a great impact on our business. It allowed us to grow. It allowed us to not focus so much on spending time on the tenants. And it was good with old school tenants and new school tenants because they could pay either way they liked. And the escrow company worked in both scenarios. The other benefit to the tenant, which tenants love, is it automatically tracks their payment history to help tenants show rent payments. This is great when if they decide they want to try to buy a house or something like that, or if you're doing what I've suggested in my other videos about rent to own. This is a great way to help them qualify for your home with rent to own so that they can purchase the property by showing that rent payment history to the mortgage company. And that helps with getting them to consistently pay on time. It's another incentive to get them to pay on time. So let me know what your thoughts are on the escrow company. I don't suggest any specific escrow company because we're not associated with an escrow company. I don't want to give you one and then they turn out to be something horrible for you. But we do have some plans to team up with an escrow company, and at that time I'll post a link to the escrow company on this video, and I'm sure I'll talk about it in other videos. If you have questions about this, or you're not sure, or you figured out a way that this might not work, then please just ask. I'd be happy to answer questions. And until next time, I wish you the best. Check out my other videos. Hit the subscribe button, and you'll get all the videos. I try to post these pretty frequently because I want you to get all this information and make smart decisions. Until next time, this is Art with Rent to Wealth, signing off.